Welcome to today's training on RSA's Payback Information Management System, or PIMS, for scholars. Today we will be going over the Payback Information Management System, or PIMS. We'll then look more closely at the data collection components and also present a demonstration of the system for scholars. We will discuss and go over some service obligation regulation reminders, and then point out resources that are available on the PIMS website for scholars. PIMS is an online data collection system. It's available year-round, and it's designed to collect and analyze data on scholars who are funded by Rehabilitation Long-Term Training, or RLTT, grants, and also to track the service obligations of scholars who are funded by RLTT grants. The PIMS system replaces the Rehabilitation Services Administration Management Information System, or MIS, that the grantees had previously been using to enter data and for tracking scholars' service obligation. PIMS will allow scholars to log into the system so that you can review the data that the grantees entered about you. Also in PIMS, scholars will be able to submit their employment information electronically, and grantees and employers will be able to review the employment information and verify and approve it all through the system. PIMS is available to grantees, scholars, and employers. It is open year-round, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. To access PIMS, you will have to log in using your email and a password that you'll create. You also will need to use multi-factor authentication to log into the system, and we'll talk a little bit about what that is coming up. We have a help desk that's available Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, both through email at rltthelpdesk@ed.gov, or through phone, 1-800-832-8142. If you ever run into issues accessing the system, or once you are able to get into the system, entering employment, submitting any other information, we are available to assist you. Multi-factor authentication, it's a process that requires users to verify their identity in multiple ways. So using two factors or ways in this case. One is using a password that you will create yourself, and the other is using something that you possess, which is a smartphone app. The way that multi-factor authentication works is you will download the Google Authenticator, which is an app, onto your smartphone or your iPad. And once you've downloaded it, you will sync it up with the website. There's a barcode that basically you just take a picture almost with your phone of the barcode, and that syncs it up to the system. Then you will get a 6-digit code that you will have to enter into the system. And then every time you log in after that first time, you will get a new code which refreshes every 30 seconds that you'll have to enter in to log into the system. And we'll talk in more detail when we go through the demo of multi-factor authentication. We also have a number of resources available on the website that will show you where they're located just about multi-factor authentication. Because we are collecting personally identifiable information in PIMS, we have a lot of protections in place to make sure all of the data remains secure. One of those is multi-factor authentication that we talked about. Also, Social Security numbers that are stored in the database are all encrypted in the database, so if anybody was able to get into the database, they still would not be able to access the Social Security numbers. We also log all of the activity that's occurring in the system, including any changes to data, whether people have logged in or not been able to log in, and when data are removed. So we review that information regularly to check for any anomalies, and make sure nothing strange seems to be happening that we need to look into further. So the PIMS data collection process has remained really very much the same as it always has been, but now you as scholars are going to be going into the system and entering your employment rather than reporting it to your grantees, and the employers will also be going into the system to verify the employment. It starts out with you as the scholar with your university completing your payback agreement that you're signing. The university then uploads the payback agreement into the system and also enters other information about you in the system, including your contact information, some demographic information, information about your program and your service obligation. And the grantee will be updating that information every year while you as the scholar continue to be enrolled in the program, like updating how much funding you've received, how many years of funding you've received, and so on. Once you exit the program, either you graduate or you exit prior to completing, you'll complete the exit certification and sign that with your university. The university will then upload that into the system. At that point, scholars may enter into their 2-year grace period, or you may go directly into fulfilling your obligation through service. When you log into the system, you'll be able to submit your information that then, after you've submitted, the university will review and determine if it's eligible for payback. And if it is eligible, your employer will then review it and verify that you are working in that position and for that length of time. For scholars who use their 2-year grace period and then are not in compliance after their 2-year grace period and do not go into eligible employment, you will be referred for cash repayment. You may, though, if you are eligible for a deferral or waiver, may be able to be processed for those to defer or waive your obligation. Grantees, the main things that they'll be doing in the system are uploading the signed payback agreements and exit certifications, entering a lot of data in the system, including contact, training information, and then looking at your employment to determine if it's eligible for service payback. Scholars, you will be logging into the system to review your contact information and make any updates as contact information changes, and also look at the service obligation information the grantee entered for you and make sure that's accurate. You'll be entering your employment information, and you will also be requesting deferrals or waivers if needed directly through the system. You will not be going through your grantees to submit documentation. That will come directly from you into the system, and that goes then to RSA to review for approval. And employers will be going into the system to verify your employment information. We wanted just to walk through a few of the changes or differences between the management information system, which was the previous system that scholars were not able to access. It was only the grantees who went in the system and were entering information and data about scholars, how that has changed now in PIMS. Regarding your service obligation, while in using the MIS, you were reporting your employment to your grantees and providing that documentation to them. And then the project directors would go in and update that themselves in the MIS. Now with PIMS, you as scholars are responsible for going into PIMS and entering your employment information directly into PIMS. And our system will then facilitate by sending out emails to your employer and project director, letting them know what they need to do in the system. Under the MIS, project directors would be responsible for determining if there are scholars that needed to be referred for cash repayment and would submit the information to RSA themselves. In PIMS, we are able to generate reports, which using the data and the information in the system that you've entered will indicate if scholars need to be referred for repayment because they're out of compliance, and then RSA will make the final decision if scholars need to be referred for repayment. And then for waivers and deferrals, while previously under the MIS, the grantees would collect waiver or deferral documentation and present those requests to RSA. Now you as scholars will be going into the system and requesting deferrals or waivers and uploading that documentation. And when we do the demo, we'll show you where in the system you'll be submitting and uploading the documentation. Scholars' responsibilities in PIMS include logging into PIMS at least every 6 months to check your contact information and training information and make sure it's all correct and up to date, update your contact information, Once you have graduated from the program or exited the program, you will be entering your employment information and also submitting requests for deferrals or waivers. A few things we felt like are really important to point out and that you have to definitely keep in mind and should be going into the system on a regular basis is that you'll only receive credit for positions once it's been approved by the grantee and verified by the employer. So just going into the system and entering your employment information, you won't see that you've actually gotten your service obligation credit. You will not get that credit until your grantee has said, yes, this is eligible employment, and your employer has verified you are working in that position. Another thing that's really important to remember is you only receive credit as of the date that you submitted the employment record. So if you're in a job and you submit your employment and a year later you're still in that job, you need to go in that year later and submit your employment information again for your employer to verify, yes, they're still working here, and then you will receive credit for that year. The system doesn't know that you're still continuing on in the same position, so you need to log in at least every 6 months to make sure you're accruing your credit. Scholars also should make sure that employers are aware that they'll be getting emails from our system, from RLTT Help Desk at ed.gov, our email address. So please alert your employers right when you submit your employment to be on the lookout for those emails. You are responsible for making sure the employers are completing their verification. And scholars who are not securing qualifying employment by the time your obligation becomes effective, so by the time your 2-year grace period has expired, will be referred for repayment. The pieces of information that scholars will enter about their employment include the name of your employer, the contact information for your employer, the date that you started in the position, and if you're no longer in that position when it ended. You'll indicate if it's a full-time position or part-time. You'll include the job title and then a description of your job duties. And that description should be very comprehensive and thorough because that's what your project director will look at to make that determination if the employment is eligible. And if they don't have enough information, they may disapprove it or need to go back to you to get more information. You can also upload any additional documentation that you have, which we really recommend that you do, just again to get as much detail and information to your project directors as possible. So once you have submitted your employment, the grantees will take a look at your employment that you've entered and make that determination if it's eligible for payback, consistent with the program regulations or not. If it is eligible, you'll receive an email letting you know that your project director has determined it's eligible and that an email has then gone to your employers for them to do their part. So then once employers, it is their turn, they'll receive an email also from our system, our RLTT Help Desk at ed.gov. They will be asked to look at each of the responses you provided and say whether or not they agree or disagree with each item. If they disagree, they will be asked to provide an explanation of why they disagree and what they think the correct response should be. And then you get an email saying either your employer has verified, you can go into the system and you should have received that additional credit, or if the employer disputed any items, you will get an email letting you know that the employer disputed. Then you'll be able to log in the system and see exactly what the employer disputed. And you'll have an opportunity then to make any adjustments that you need to the employment record, resubmit it again for approval and verification. So now we're going to present a demonstration of several activities that you'll be doing in the system, starting with how you log into the system, how you'll update your contact information, and submit employment, as well as submitting requests for deferrals or waivers.
Okay, so this is the Payback Information Management System website. And this is the home page. On the left-hand side, you'll see a menu with several links to pages with important information that is publicly available. You can access these sites without having to log into the system. And the first one I want to point out is the training and resources page, which includes information for grantees, scholars, and employers. So for example, for the scholars, you have a quick reference guide with questions that come up frequently, such as how to log into the system, how to reset your password. You also have screenshots available here for you to view, and information for employers that you can share with them without having them to log into the system. You can email it to them, or you can share the link. For example, the employer's tips. It's a simple 2 pages with brief information on how the employment verification process works. So we encourage you to share with your employers this information so that they are familiar with the verification process. In addition to the training and resources, we also have frequently asked questions. And these are 2 sets of FAQs. We've separated the first set into regulatory FAQs, so any questions pertaining to the regulations of the program, what constitutes eligible employment, questions such as your service obligation length and grace period, and questions of that nature. The second set of FAQs pertain to the PIMS system. So questions about receiving error messages, logging into the system, resetting your password, creating a new employment record, etc. We also put a link to the RSA website, the Rehabilitation Services Administration site, for you to quickly access in case you need to get information in there. When we have news updates, we'll post it in the website right here under news updates, and the contact information for the help desk. And you'll see that it is also static here on the left-hand side panel. We have our mailing address, the phone number, fax, and email for us for you to reach out to the help desk if you have any questions. Now, to log into the PIMS site, you can click on the secure login link here on the bottom left, and you can also go to the bottom right corner and click on that link. If you ever forget your password or can't remember which password you had created, you can always use the forgot password function here. You'll be prompted to enter your email address, and then you'll receive an email with instructions on how to log in. Now I'm going to demonstrate what the page looks like once you log in. And if this is the first time that you're logging into the system, after you enter your email and your password, you'll be prompted to enter the multi-factor authentication code. If it's the first time that you log in, what you'll see on the screen is a barcode and brief instructions asking you to download the Google Authenticator app on your smart device. It could be your phone or your iPad or a tablet. Once you download that app into the device, you'll scan the barcode that shows up on screen to link your device to your account in PIMS. And then you will see the 6-digit code prompt on your device. You'll enter it here with no spaces or dashes. I'm opening up my phone, opening up the Google Authenticator app, and I'm going to enter the 6-digit code. Remember that this code updates every 30 seconds. So each time you log in, you'll have to open the app and put in a new code. Once you're in your account page, this is what it will look like. It's broken down into 7 different sections, and I'll go over them right now. Sections A, B, and C are your personal information. So information such as your social security number and email address are here in section A. You'll see that your social security is encrypted, so you only see the last 4 digits for security purposes. If you wanted to use a different email address, you can update that information right here on your account, as well as entering an alternate email address. You can do that by clicking the Edit My Information link. You see the field becomes editable, so you can enter different information here. The Edit My Information link allows you to edit sections A, B, and C. So your identifying information, your mailing address, phone number, or if you wanted to add an alternate contact information.
You can also enter alternate contact information for an emergency person. If you would like, you enter that information here and then click Update. And you will see your information updated in these sections. Moving on to the following section, section D is information about your training program. So you'll see the name of your university, information about the program in which you're enrolled, and the grant number. This one is important when you call the help desk or email the help desk. We always encourage you to provide your full name as well as the grant number so that we can locate your record, just in case in the voicemail we can't hear the full name, or in case there is a scholar with the same name, it's easier to identify you if you provide those 2 pieces of information. So you'll find that in here in this section. You also have information about your exit or completion date. So if you graduated the program or exited the program, this date would be displayed here. And after you graduate from the program, you will see the degree or certificate that you received. That's a result of going through the program. Then in section E, you have information about your service obligation status. If you are a recipient of 2 or multiple grants, you'll have that information listed for 1 grant first and then the following grant. So here you'll see grant 2, information about the training, and then service obligation status. So in this case, in the service obligation part, you see the accumulated academic years of funding that you received while you were enrolled in the program. In this case, this scholar received 1 year of funding. So the service obligation owed is 2 years or 24 months. You'll see the total funding received on this column, and then the 2-year grace period. If you already graduated from the program, you'll see that the remaining grace period is displayed here. So as time goes by, and you'll see that the information is displayed here. Your program completion status, if you graduated or if you're still enrolled in the program, you'll see that displayed. And then the number of years that you have fulfilled towards your obligation will update automatically here as you enter your employment, and it gets approved and verified by your employer. And then you'll also be able to see how much time you have remaining to fulfill your obligation and the date by which you must complete your obligation. Once you've reviewed all this information and everything looks correct, you can certify that the information is correct and click the first option. Or if you find any discrepancies with the data that was entered by your university, you can click the second option and click Submit Grant. And then we encourage you to contact the help desk so that we can discuss that discrepancy and make sure that all the information you have in the system is correct. Now, moving down to the next section is section F, eligible employment. Here's where you'll be able to enter your employment data. You'll see 3 links on the right-hand side. You can view or edit your employers, add a new employment record, or view all the employment records that you have over the years. If you have multiple positions, you'll be able to view that information here. For now, if this is the first time that you're reporting your employment, you'll have to create a new record. And you need to create a new record for each different position, or if the position goes from part-time to full-time, you'll need to create a different record for that. So in order to show you the employment information, I have to fill out this form, and the questions with the red asterisk are mandatory, so I have to enter that information before I can proceed. Let's just enter some information here. For the purposes of the demo, you have to enter an address, of course, the employer's name. If there's a department, you can enter that information, and then their address. And phone number. You also have the option to enter 2 contact information, one for your supervisor and one for your human resources official. You can enter both, but only one needs to verify the employment. So if you only have the contact for your supervisor, that's okay. And then you'll have to enter their email address. We ask that you enter the email address 2 times to make sure that there are no typos. Again, you can enter the human resources official information, and then you'll have to indicate the type of organization that you work for, whether it's a qualified nonprofit, a private organization, if you work for the VA, etc. Once you enter all that information, you click next and go to the second page. Now this question is asking whether your employment is current. If so, you'll only be prompted to enter your start date or the date that the job began. Of course, if you're enrolled on the program, you can only enter the date after you graduated from the program. If it's past employment, you click no, and you'll have the option to enter an end date. So let's say we began this position in May and it ended in October. Enter your job title. And provide a description of your duties and responsibilities. Try to be as specific as possible to provide enough information to your project director so that they can determine if the position meets the criteria. You can also upload a file with supporting documentation. Again, provide your project director with as much information as possible so that they can make that determination. Click upload, and then once it's uploaded, close. Indicate if it's a full-time or part-time position. If it's a part-time job, you'll have to enter on average how many hours per week you work. So let's say 20, whether or not the position is a voluntary one, and whether or not the position is the result of an internship that you completed as part of your RSA training program. So we'll say no, and then you can select the person that you want the employment verification email to go to, either your supervisor, or if you enter data for your HR representative, you can select that or both, and then certify that all the information that you've entered is accurate. You have the option to save this record for later and come back and edit information. Maybe you forgot to upload the file, or you need to retrieve it before you can upload it. So you can save all that for later, or you can save and submit the record. Once you click the Save and Submit option, the system will automatically send an email to your employer or employers. It will first go to your project director so that they can review and determine if the employment meets the eligibility criteria. So if they approve it, you will receive an email notification, and your employer then will receive the email request to verify your employment information. If the project director determines that the position does not meet the criteria, they will indicate that, and you will again receive an email notification. We encourage you to discuss with your project director the information about your employment. If you need to make any changes, you can go back and make the necessary edits to the employment record and then save and submit. And it will go through your project director again. Once the project director approves it, it will go to your employer for verification. Everything is in real time. So as soon as you click Save and Submit, I'm scrolling down here on your main menu to section F, eligible employment. You will see here that your employment record status says pending project director review. So you'll know that the project director has received the notification to review your employment. After it moves on to the employer, you will see that the status will update to pending employer review. And after it has been verified, you will receive credit in this on sections E, service obligation status. You will see that the information will update automatically here after the employment has been verified by the employer. The last section on your scholar record is section G on deferrals and waivers. As it was mentioned earlier, you can request a deferral or waiver here in PIMS. And as you see here on the right-hand side, the link to request a deferral or waiver. The criteria for requesting a waiver or deferral has not changed. So if you are seeking a waiver due to a permanent disability, you can select this option. If you have a reason for a deferral, you can select the appropriate option here. So for example, we'll select that you're enrolled in a full-time program in the field of rehabilitation, and you're going to enter the date that you're enrolled in the program. Let's say you began that program last January, and your expected graduation date from the program is May of the following year. You have to upload supporting documentation for your request. So in the case of the waiver, you have to provide supporting documentation from your medical provider. In the case of a educational deferral, you need to provide a copy of your transcript, letter from your institution. And once you upload that, you can select the submit option. And that information will be sent to RSA for review. And you see here that the status is in review. Once it's approved, the status will update to approved. And that is it for the demonstration of the Payback Information Management System.
Now we'll be going over some service obligation and debt repayment reminders. Scholars must be familiar with the final regulations that were published in the Federal Register on August 19th, 2016. There's a link on the PIMS website to access the regulations, and as a condition of receiving the grant, scholars must comply with the regulation requirements. Scholars, per the regulation, receive funding must work for 2 years for every year of funding that the scholar has received once they've completed or exited the program. And the work payback must be completed within the sum of the number of years owed plus 2 additional years that are referred to as the grace period. If you receive funding after September 2016 and you leave the program before you've completed one academic year, you must repay through cash. You are not eligible to repay through service. The criteria that is used to determine qualified employment has not changed at all, and grantees will still be assisting scholars in identifying names and addresses of qualifying employers. There are a number of reasons why scholars may be submitted for cash repayment. One that we just mentioned, if scholars have not completed one academic year of the program and leave prior to completing, and they receive funds after September 19th, 2016, they'll be referred for repayment. If the 2-year grace period is passed and the scholar has not obtained qualifying employment, they'll be referred for repayment. Or if the scholar starts in qualified employment, but then when it becomes apparent they will not be able to fulfill their payback by the completion date, they'll be referred. There are several reasons scholars may be eligible for waivers or deferrals. Scholars may request a waiver if they will not are unable to obtain employment in the field of voc rehabilitation due to a disability or some type of functional limitation. And scholars may request deferrals for educational, medical, or other purposes. There are several resources that we went over during the demo that are available on our website, and we recommend everyone take a good look at, including on the training and resources page. We have a number of important resources, and also the frequently asked questions, also links to the regulations are available on the website. And of course, the help desk is available Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So please contact the help desk if you have any questions about anything that we've gone over in the training, or you need assistance once you start going into the system. Thank you very much.